In Diablo 3, we got rainbows and butterflies. But in Diablo 4, we got hallucinogenic drugs.
Oh no, they're coming.
It's nice to know the devs are a little more in touch with their audience these days. But how good is this game really? Most importantly, will the real issues in this game be addressed before Season 1? Let's check them out. Let me start by saying I loved playing through this game. While I started out skipping most of the cutscenes, I soon realized that that was a mistake. The storytelling and visuals make every cutscene not only important, but intriguing. They're entertaining, gory, and 10 out of 10 satisfying. Whether you follow the lore or not, you may find yourself very well versed in it after seeing these. In fact, D4 might hold the title in my heart for best playthrough of any Blizzard game ever. Seeing the character you created dance on the line of bad and evil is captivating. The playthrough was clearly an important factor in development. One of the best ways to level your character early on is just to play through the story. This is certainly a concept taken from other ARPG titles, but for good reason. It works, and honestly, the team did this better than all of them. And while the itemization is a bit different than other Diablo games, it gives players a feeling of control over their builds. But some of the pieces of this game that make it so fun have also contributed to some significant imbalances in it. By now, you're probably asking yourself the real questions. What is it that's so broken? Who cares? And most importantly, what the f*** are those glasses you're wearing? Well, I'm glad you asked. Months ago, I started getting massive headaches based on how much screen time I was getting on a daily basis. So I did what any reasonable human being would do: drugs. But come to find out, there's a better way. And thanks to these new glasses, my liver is a lot better off. GMG Performance makes these anti-blue light glasses, and they might just be what we all need. The blue light from too much screen time can cause headaches, eye strain, trouble sleeping, and many other ailments. These days, overexposure is very common. From binge watching our favorite series, to gaming, to that 8-hour desk job that you're staring right at a computer screen all day at, we're running our retinas into the muck. But GMG Performance eyeglasses act as a shield against this blue light. They help reduce eye strain, improve your concentration, and most importantly, preserve the health of your vision over the long term. Use my link below for 40% off for the next 48 hours. Your vision is your most important sense, so protect it with GMG Performance eyeglasses at nearly half the retail price with my link below. If you've played multiple classes in D4, you might have already noticed that the damage isn't really consistent among all of them. There are so many multipliers and conditionals defining the success of certain classes, and the only way to see what your character does for damage is to look at the numbers that pop up when you hit monsters. But when it comes to balance, there's far more to it than that. The itemization in Diablo 4 is built around legendary aspects. These are abilities that can be found or earned and added to items. They are the most powerful aspects of a build. Pun definitely intended. Individual aspects are so crucial, and important decisions are made based off of which ones can actually be in certain items. So it may come as no surprise that the two classes on which players can equip the most items and in turn take advantage of the most legendary aspects have risen to the top. The Barbarian with his arsenal system and the Rogue with her additional weapon slot have certainly seemed powerful to the players who picked those builds on the first weekend. If you were absolutely slaughtered in the Fields of Hatred on opening weekend, there was a very good chance that it was at the hands of a Rogue or a Barbarian.
Just pretend like they're trash bombs.
But the most overpowered attribute to any build we saw on the battlefield was mobility. While damage output can be impressive on the Rogue and Barbarian, the Sorcerer and Barbarian dominated the Fields of Hatred. Barbs can run across the map like a fast clipper ship, and the Sorcerer can teleport from off-screen and freeze her opponent, further illustrating its mobility, which is just on a different planet when compared to other builds. In my experience of playing Diablo 2 PvP for so many years, mobility is so key in PvP, so it would be nice if other classes were up to speed in this regard. Another rather annoying mechanic in the PvP realm is the concept of being completely immobilized by another player. While it feels good to be on the punishing end of this, such mechanics in games have historically been a buzzkill for players. Players just want to play their characters, whether they're either good or bad. Being frozen in place or completely immobilized doesn't really make for interactive gameplay. Now granted, there are ways to get out of this state, but they usually involve entering immunity, which is a state where your movement speed is reduced and your offense is significantly limited. And that's assuming you haven't already exhausted that skill in an attempt to not get one-tapped when your opponent rode up on the screen, which brings us to the next point: damage output. Player versus player is a very difficult concept to balance in any game, but I think they're off to a great start in D4. The feeling of just being in the fields of hatred is second to none. No other PvP in any game feels quite like this. But if you happen to run into a player who is 2 or 3 levels higher than you even, you might have lost all of those seeds that you farmed rather quickly. The damage scaling, especially after level 50, is almost exponential with the Paragon system. So if you were one of those players who grinded hard and leveled up quicker than most people, you probably also enjoyed slaying some casuals in the fields of hatred. 2 crucial keyword mechanics exist in Diablo IV, and they're completely necessary if you want your duel to last more than a couple of seconds. And those are being immune and being fortified. Depending on the class you're using, these states can be easy or more complicated to achieve. While both states are temporary ones, without them, every duel would look like it does in Diablo III, where players are practically one-shotted in every interaction. While most duels we've seen so far have taken place between level 40 and 80 players, this is only going to get worse as all players move their way up their respective Paragon boards, boasting higher damage and less life respective to that damage output. We were already worried in the beta when we saw some damage numbers being output by certain classes. The Barbarian, for example, putting out over 350,000 damage at level 25. Even with the 93% damage reduction in PvP, 7% of those numbers is about 10 times probably your character's life total right now. And that's just on 1 tick of Whirlwind at level 25. They wanted it to feel chaotic, and mission accomplished. But among the chaos, I believe fairness has a small glimmer of hope. But what can even be done at this point? Is there something the devs could try before Season 1 that might preserve the longevity of D4 PvP? First and foremost, fix the mobility for each class. In Diablo 2, the Sorceress dominated gameplay for years because of her teleport mechanic. Many players hate that mechanic still to this day, and admittedly, teleport is a bit difficult to watch and follow if you're tuning into a streamer playing the game. But in response, the devs made the item Enigma, which gave every class access to the skill teleport, fixing the mobility issues for nearly every character. Should Enigma be in D4? I don't know. What do you think? By the very least, I think each class's mobility should be in some way comparable to the Sorcerer. Balancing damage output, though, is a whole different beast. While some players have expressed frustration and suggested limiting the level instance of players in the Fields of Hatred, I actually don't like that solution. PvP is typically a smaller population in an ARPG game, so just imagine when the hype numbers for D4 wear off and what that would look like with this approach. You might never see anybody in the Fields of Hatred at certain levels. Instead, what if damage per second from a single player had a cap, and that cap was a percentage of the player's life total? For argument's sake, say 45%. Teams of 4 could still wipe fields clean with this approach. This would also ensure that all of your 1v1 matches at least last more than 2 seconds. This certainly wouldn't be a replacement for other balance changes, but I think something like this is a pretty good failsafe for any change that they make now or in the future. I'm aware that PvP is not as important to a number of people. In fact, many of you may not care about it at all. But the truth is, PvP is something that can keep players around for decades. And with a healthy monetization structure that's in place in Diablo IV, I think it's in the best interest of everyone for this to be balanced. What would you suggest? Be sure to let me know down in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing and checking out some of my others.